Since it's Halloween and all, I figure it's only natural to check out some super spooky retro games. So today we'll be taking a look at Swamp Thing on the NES. For those of you wondering what the hell a Swamp Thing is, it was a B-movie classic from the 80s. Essentially, a scientist gets some swamp DNA on him or something and turns into a mutant with the power of the swamp.
Here comes trouble.
Honestly, it's been a long time since I've even seen the movie, but it was fairly popular, I guess, spawning all sorts of sequels, toys, and even a cartoon with the intro set to the tune of Wild Thing.
Swamp Thing, you are amazing.
It also ended up with an NES game because of course it did. So let's all get cozy next to the fireplace, turn off the lights, and see just how scary Swamp Thing is for the NES. Load up Swamp Thing and you're greeted with what appears to be a California raisin that's seen far better days. The story's something about how he wants to make an army of superhumans, unmen, to take over the world with. To do so, all that stands in his way is Swamp Thing, everyone's favorite swamp-covered mutant. He needs to capture Swamp Thing and harvest whatever it is in him that makes him so damn cool. Then the game just kinda dumps you right into the stage without even so much as a stage 1 screen. It's actually quite jarring for some reason. Playing Swamp Thing is probably worse than actually being Swamp Thing. The game tries to be your standard 2D side-scrolling platform action game like so many other NES games out there, but fails in just about every single aspect. Swamp Thing can move left or right, jump, punch, and shoot slime balls if you get the power up. It's not the largest moveset of all time, but adequate enough for an NES game. It's just that Swamp Thing doesn't actually do anything good. Swamp Thing himself is as slow as a creature that's literally made out of swamp parts probably should be. The guy just doesn't move very fast. This wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for the constant stream of enemies exploding out of things right next to you. You literally have zero time to react before something's hitting you, like this ghost knife that just sort of appears out of nowhere behind you, or these fish things that just don't give a shit about being fair at all and jump out of the water when you're right on top of them. You just have to slowly inch your way forward to make sure something isn't going to suddenly jump out at you, and even then, that doesn't work all the time. This is no way to play a game, it's just painful. Speaking of the enemies, they can all go straight to hell. First off, I apologize for not showing anything more than the first stage of this game. The main reason being because of these pile of shit enemies. Every single one of them is programmed with a maximum amount of hatred for the player. I already mentioned ghost knives and robot fish, but you also get robot possums that do nothing but go back and forth on platforms, which should be easy enough to dodge, but somehow no matter how well you time your jump, they'll hit you almost every single time. How about giant robot mosquitoes that slowly descend on top of you with no way to jump over them? Your only way to avoid them is to hope that they pass over top of you, or if you can manage to run away from them. But even then, there's no guarantee that'll work since Satan himself programmed these assholes. Sometimes they'll be fine just going right over the top of you, and other times they'll break their own rules and come down even further, making you take a hit. This is hell. Oh, and let's not forget these things. I don't even know what they are. They just kind of float on top of the water. Are they sharp cans or something? Did someone actually put a sharpened, tossed away can in the game as an enemy? I really think they did, and this is only the first level. So, Swamp Thing already has the odds stacked against him with shit movement and cheap enemies all over the place. That means he's got some awesome attack powers to fight back with, right? Oh, God no. Swamp Thing's standard punch does almost nothing. It barely travels any distance at all and usually gets you hurt in the process of trying to kill anything. You can't even punch while you're ducking. You're better off just avoiding enemies entirely, especially since more often than not, they're completely invulnerable to the punch. You really never know which enemies you can hurt and ones you can't until they've hit you 2 or 3 times. Why even put an attack in the game if it's this useless? What evil monster could come up with this stuff? Was it this guy? I don't know, but it sucks. It turns what I'm gathering is supposed to be an action game into nothing more than carefully dodging and jumping over enemies without anything to clear a path with. Well, I shouldn't say anything. You do get a ball of swamp goo that you can throw as a power-up, but you only have a limited supply you can use, and even then, as with the punch, most of the worst enemies are invulnerable to it, so why even bother? You're just going to have to accept that Swamp Thing is mostly powerless, and get used to jumping and dodging your way through levels. That's about all I can muster for Swamp Thing. I generally try to play through these games for review, but Swamp Thing broke me after just one stage. I did eventually make it to the second stage, but it's just more of the same cheap bullshit from the first stage. The game is literally nothing more than memorizing every single stage and jump until you can make it through, and I just don't have that kind of patience for shit anymore. Obviously, I can't recommend that anyone play Swamp Thing on the NES. I'd actually recommend running the opposite direction if you ever see it out in the wild. This is nothing anyone should ever subject themselves to, and probably one of the worst NES games out there. Still though, if you're looking for something that will cause screams of terror and fright from your friends this Halloween, well, Swamp Thing may be your game.